thought, and maybe just a devil's advocate question about the criteria of this in-between system of having certified areas. I guess just to push on the politics, maybe on the pragmatic politics around artists. I have encountered some kind of, I guess, kind of hippie, ferally countercultural artists who feel that they are entitled to make a living out of art. And I think, of course, art is a really important part of society, but whether it should be a guaranteed occupation for all people, I guess that's coming a bit from myself, but I wonder about that politically, pragmatically, whether artists, it's a constituency, of course, but whether it, yeah, all right, that's enough. I think you get my gist.
So everyone might have the right to make art, but not necessarily the right to an income from that art. Is that more or less?
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
Jane or Elise, do you want to respond to that?
Having taught in an arts faculty for much of my life, I can resonate with what you're saying. Some people you really do want a crown at times. Me, my wonderful art and I. But I mean, that's another version in a way of the spook of the person who doesn't contribute. I think these questions really have to be dealt with culturally rather than through legislation. And that is the history of the commons movement. And I think, you know, a lot of these arguments about compliance and conditionality, it has to be dealt with. It can't be avoided, but it has to be dealt with culturally. And I think we all need to go back to Eleanor Ostrom, who didn't give us the answers, but she gave us the questions. She gave us the information and the research base for studying how communities themselves manage their resourcing processes. And sometimes they do impose sanctions. You know, in the early days of America, they ran a kind of common system in New England in the townships, and the sanction they used was banishment, which is a pretty brutal deprivation of resources. But I mean, that was an absolutely rare and exceptional imposition after being heard by a court. So it was not any kind of normal process of sanctioning. So again, I think it's getting rid of the furphy, which Elise talked about very effectively, and replacing that with some much more realistic, but I think eternally difficult process of societies just trying to manage their own work and their own systems of fairness. There's no way out of the difficulty of that. It's part of human life. But instead of ignoring it with these ridiculous kind of legalistic kind of political sanction systems, we need to replace it with a genuine application of human endeavor and intelligence.
I would just quickly like to respond that what I think the difference between what we are, I mean, the people you're talking to are Universal Basic Income Australia. And so our big issue with the livable income guarantee is that it doesn't go far enough against that furphy, that it is haunted by the furphy of the leaner who's not a lifter. And obviously you're going to get, you know, critiqued from both. You're going to get critiqued by other people who have a different point of view. But what we're presenting, and, you know, we do so unapologetically, is a different position, and that's the position that we should do away with this idea of the unworthy moocher entirely. And I know that the response my response when reading the proposal and other people in the group was that we feel that you're conceding too much to that to existing cultural norms. And I would also add that we change politics and we change institutions and we change cultural norms in a feedback loop. It's not just that you leave politics to the side while you work on the cultural change. You know, it's the institutions have to change, and that allows for further cultural change. And we're quite aggressive on that. On that note, I'll go to Josh, sorry. Go ahead, Rog. Go ahead, Rog.
Can I hear from Elise still, if she wants to get in?
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say that just off the back of Jane's points, I think, you know, also that we're faced with, you know, two major like current crises, which is of course what climate change and biodiversity loss is doing, and how that's going to challenge and how that is challenging how we understand what the economy is. I think the livable, and the other one is inequality, and that's also to say, like we talk about basic income and livable income guarantee very much within sort of the nation state, and we don't sort of reflect on how wealth here is of course stolen from First Nations people, but it's also we're locked into a process of accumulation by dispossession, which is based on the dispossession of people elsewhere, who are geographically separate from us, but very much interconnected with wealth and income, wealth that the Australian economy relies on. So, like I in those two, and so to think about those things for a moment, climate change is forcing us to think about what contribution means. And I do believe that the livable income guarantee, I've sort of said my sort of importance of what I think it brings to breaking down how we understand the patriarchal wage structure. But I also think it's important in terms of rethinking what the economy means in terms of how we prepare ourselves for, climate change and the ecological breakdown that is imminent and already unfolding before our eyes. And the kinds of contributions and the ways in which we understand work is so important in that fight, in terms of, a post-development kind of thinking. But also people around the world, the global majority around the world have been sold a lie about development's promise that there will be enough jobs for everybody. The formal economy is the informal economy. And so, again, this need to break down the primacy of wage labor is fundamentally important as a global fight also. And whilst I think the universal basic income has huge importance for those debates also, I still just want to reiterate the point that the work that the livable income guarantee does is really challenge what Jane has already said about this importance of rethinking what contribution means and what work means, and the cultural work that needs to go on for that.
I've just realized we're now 5 minutes over time. I've been completely absorbed in the conversation and loving it. I did want to get to Eva Cox, who had wanted to contribute earlier, but I'm sorry, I had lost.
Can I have 5 minutes? I promise.
Oh well, can we try and keep it to 2 and have 3 minutes for responses
I just want
from the authors?
A couple of things I do want to raise, and I put it up there. Maybe we need to start looking for what I'm calling a universal social dividend, so that we get back to the idea we're sharing the commonwealth, and it's about things there that gets away from the idea it's just a payment, it's our share of the wealth. We need to get back to the idea that we're not just a set of individuals the way economics makes us, but we are interrelated, and that pushes. But on the broader issue, I've had a lot of experience in this area, and the more we put in the conditionalities and the more we stick with this, the more we stick with basically white men invented in the Industrial Revolution 200 odd years ago, and we've managed to spread it right through the rest of the world. Lots of people manage without the monetary stuff, and I do think we need to try and build something. And I signed up for the alternative thing there, but I'm not too sure that it's not going to end up with so many bits of conditionality that we end up trying to make. I mean, half this bloody discussion has been about the conditionality, and maybe it's worth going for it. And the final point I want to make is, what's very interesting is it's not well supported by women who do not understand it. We have some feminist groups pushing it, but a lot of them very wary of it. And given the fact that the current mess is made because of male versions of economics, can we A, stop talking about just the economy and start talking about society, and B, to start talking about the fact that there's lots more to things than paid work. It's just a sort of short-term invention by white males. And we've got to start putting together what's valued in the society on the basis of what it contributes, not its monetary value. We've got to stop making economic equations, because they'll always turn out looking like penises. Elegantly put as a finale,